Hola, profe. um, Pardon. So, this last, these last few chapters, I think, basically are just sum up how Esperanza eventually finds herself and how she kind of comes to terms with her situation and where she's from. So in Payasos Rojos, um, I thought what I understood was Esperanza is telling the story about how she was um, sexually assaulted by a group of boys, and she keeps saying over and over again how it's not how society portrayed it. Um, it's not how the books and the movies portrayed sex. It's actually, you know, her experience was a lot different. Um, um, and I think she's just commenting on the relationship between um, sex and love, because she keeps saying, like, the boy tells her, "I love you, Spanish girl, I love you," and it's kind of just like how women are um, just objectified, and um, how love, he tosses that phrase around pretty freely. So he just, it shows how, like, it just shows the relationship between sex and love and how they're related and not related. Um, and then um, in this next capítulo, Rosas de Linoleo, um, what I understood was that Esperanza is telling us about how Sally gets married, and how she's really young, and her husband um, ends up being abusive, which we've seen in many other chapters, and he doesn't let her leave the house. But she says that, Sally says that it's okay because she gets money every so often from her husband, so it's all fine to be, married that young and to be treated so poorly. Um, we've seen the power of men in the Spanish culture, and the husband superiority, and how, like, it's okay um, to treat women like that. It's accepted in that culture, and it just shows how the husband controls the marriage. Um, One question I did have was, I was just a little confused by the last line. Le gusta mirar las paredes con que pulcritud se encuentran sus esquinas, las rosas en el linóleo del piso, el techo lisito como pastel de novia. I think it's saying how, like, Sally likes to look at these objects, like, in the house while she's kind of trapped there. I just wasn't really sure the significance of that, because usually the last lines of all these chapters are pretty significant and just, like, poetic in themselves, so I thought that line was important, and I just wasn't really sure the full significance of it, so that's a question I had. Las Tres Hermanas, el próximo capítulo. What I understood, it kind of reminded me of the fortune teller reading a couple chapters back, in a couple of the last sections. So these sisters, she's at the funeral. She's at this funeral, and she's kind of struggling being at the funeral. She's not used to it, and it's a baby funeral. It's a funeral of a baby. Le bébé murió. So it's even harder to understand, to comprehend, and these sisters call her over and ask her what her name is, and um, ask to read her hands and basically tell her that um, she's special, but it's no puedes olvidar quién eres. So you're not able to forget where you're from, which I think Esperanza has been struggling a lot with because she sees the stuff around her, the stuff in her society, and um, she's not proud of a lot of these things that she's seeing, and she wants to escape, but these sisters are saying, don't forget where you're from, like, you're here for a reason. They're reading her hands, and they're the fact that the hand reading and a fortune teller reading was in 2 chapters just show that, like, this is, like, Esperanza, these, like, Esperanza is trying to find out, like, who she is and where she comes from and, like, why she is meant to be where she is. So I think this chapter, Las Tres Hermanas help her see that, to not forget where she comes from, even if she wants to. And then el próximo capítulo, Alicia y yo charlamos en los escalones de Edna. So Alicia is this girl that Esperanza is hanging out with, and I think in this chapter they're talking about how Mango Street needs to be, like, bettered, and who's gonna do that. They're questioning who's gonna make it better. Is it gonna be El Alcalde, the mayor? And then they obviously not. So I guess this is calling attention to how if Esperanza just wants to leave this Mango Street behind, it's never going to get better for anyone. So since she knows that it needs to get better, she needs to herself to try to make it better and to try to come back and make a difference, make a change, instead of just leaving it behind. And I think these last 2 capítulos, I didn't understand these as well. I think because they seem pretty simple, but I think they have a lot of deeper meanings. But I think basically in these last 2, Una Casa Propia, she's talking about her own belongings, having like the house of her own, and like her roots and where she's from. I didn't really understand that one as well, like how that relates. And then the last chapter, A veces Mango dice adios. It has a different feel than the other chapters. I think it's written a little differently. And the last sentence I think is really important. It says, me ido, no sabrán por ahora que me he ido para volver por los que se quedaron, por los que no. Which I think is saying, like, I think he ido para volver por los que se quedaron means to return for those who remain. That's what I got from it. So I think it goes along saying, like, she wants to leave, she wants to escape Mango Street, but she has to return eventually to help those who remain and to improve that culture that she's viewed her whole life, and even the stuff that she's not proud of. Her roots are on Mango Street, and she has to realize that, which I think she does by the end. I think it comes up. So that's what I understood from these last few sections.